how you feel after a decade of HCPP.
I'm sad that it's ending. I hope something new is going to come out of it. So, yeah, a little sad ending, but still we are enjoying the conference.
Yeah, so HCPP is really important historically because it was here that we had a lot of important projects founded. So some stuff like Darkfi, NIM gave their first presentations at HCPP and also owe a lot to the culture of crypto anarchy that this space and this conference represents. But I don't think it's really the end for HCPP. I think it's just evolving. You know, some of the older leadership who founded this project are moving on, and there's some new leadership coming on. So, you know, I think there'll be future conferences carrying the same message forward and, you know, like communicating with the next generation of cypherpunks and crypto anarchists.
Talk to me about the role of the AssangeDAO, what your expectations were and how were they met? Did you achieve?
The AssangeDAO bankrolled Julian's freedom. Julian is only free because the AssangeDAO raised all those funds, which were used literally for all the legal proceedings in the last 2 years, and also some before. In that regard, I mean, it's probably the only DAO right now that has actually achieved some real-world impact. All others, there's a lot of DeFi stuff, but we actually freed Assange. I think this hasn't been acknowledged enough in the media, which is annoying a lot of members or contributors to the AssangeDAO. And there has been a lot of misreporting on the AssangeDAO. I'm giving a talk tomorrow about the DAO. I don't know whether you listened to the other presentation on the Assange case. There was one today, not by us. So the goal was to free Assange by all means necessary. That has been achieved, but there were a lot of governance problems or issues. The contributors have faced many hurdles over the last 2 years since starting this project, and from that perspective, probably it hasn't worked out how I wanted it to work out. That still can work out, and we're actually hoping that Julian is going to get involved soon to make his contribution to the AssangeDAO that bankrolled his freedom.
Yeah, and I'll just add for some context on AssangeDAO. It's important to remember that the AssangeDAO was a project that attracted over 10,000 people to pool money together around this kind of common mission to free Assange by all means necessary. So it was a very large DAO, you know, in terms of the numbers that were involved and also in terms of the amount raised. So between 10,000 people, we pooled together $55 million, which was all sent to the foundation that was bankrolling the Assange legal campaign, the Wow Holland Foundation. So, you know, it was from a DAO historical perspective, it's been the most important and the most successful DAO raise to date. So, you know, I think that's important to emphasize the scale of it and also the fact that it actually tangibly achieved a real world goal that other DAOs have not managed to do that.
How, after bringing this 10,000 contributors together towards a common goal, and then I'd say you achieved the goal in terms of the raise and contributing to the freedom. What happens to those communities that gathered around towards that common goal after the goal has been achieved? Did you see like a evaporation in the DAO contributors, or are they sticking around waiting for what's next?
I mean, there were 10,000 contributors who donated to the AssangeDAO. There were very different people. There were on one side the hardcore Assange cypherpunk supporters, and the others you had people who were more interested in, who were more into crypto. Some people thought, the token we issued would go up. So there was a very varied community that is very hard to govern. Also, one wonders whether the permissionlessness of these systems, when they deal with some person who is persecuted for such a long time, someone who's probably one of the number one enemies of the United States, if you do this all in the open, in a transparency, obviously we faced a lot of interferences over the last 2 years, some that have not been yet reported in relation to AssangeDAO. So I think maybe I was a bit naive at the time, and probably a lot of other people too, but it led to situations where one member ended up in hospital for a very long time period. The website was attacked on a constant scale. We lost access to the website, the sites, but it also shows that these things have not yet been achieved, or the decentralization is actually very, very important. If you just look at AssangeDAO, you see, well, you cannot have transparent auctions. Or in some cases, you shouldn't have that, especially if you deal with such a sensitive topic, such as Julian Assange's freedom, or people, got their flats broken in. There were death threats for various members, and all of this was done with no one being paid. So while we raised all those funds, thankfully, the lawyers were able to be paid. There were a lot of legal actions that were able to be actually funded, or that hadn't happened before because they were not defensive actions. It's actually Assange going after UC Global in Spain. And these cases, that brought out so much, and that wouldn't have been possible without it. But at the same time, AssangeDAO made this huge donation, and there's still a lot of questions remaining. What's going to happen to the funds that are still in Wouw Holland Foundation? Everyone has different ideas. Some members say it should go back to the DAO, others say it should go into a foundation and be used for similar causes. At this moment in time, we are trying to restructure governance. The collective is trying to restructure, but I think it will mainly depend on Julian's help, contribution to all of this.
Yeah. And so I'll just extrapolate on something Silke mentioned, which was about the DAO was, for many of us, a real learning experience because it kind of cut to the heart of the philosophy of what is a DAO, where DAOs, a word that means decentralized autonomous organizations, and there's a lot of different ideas about what that was. At the time when we made the DAO, a DAO was essentially a multi-sig, which is a kind of a wallet that is owned by several people. Everyone on the wallet has the opportunity to sign off certain transactions. So it's a kind of collectivized crypto wallet. So it's a wallet where you also have voting apparatus. So it means that community, in our case, holders of the token, Justice, can be involved in making votes on proposals that could be to do with, freeing Assange and so on. So that was the kind of the structure of the DAO that we put in place back in 2022, early 2022. And then, we, in the end though, because we were working closely with the Assange family, and there was a desire from their side they felt that the best way to serve Assange at that time was to finance legal fees from the non-profit structure. So we, at that point, made the large donation to Wouw Holland Foundation via an NFT purchase. And at that point, though, we lost the ability for those 10,000 DAO members to have a say through the governance process in how the funds were spent. So we did run into a kind of a conflict between these traditional organizations, such as non-profit structures, and these new organizations like DAOs that are online, on-chain, and decentralized. Where we had a community who had funded the DAO and wanted to participate in the Assange's freedom, but actually it was being operated in an opaque way by a non-profit foundation, and we did have a kind of issue with where there wasn't sufficient transparency. So I think there's a really interesting whole angle there. And also I'll just say, again, to further contextualize Silke's point, that she mentioned transparent auctions. So when we donated the money, this took place through an NFT auction, where there was a digital artist called Pac who had made an artwork called Clock that was put online, and there was an auction for this artwork. And AssangeDAO bid for this. So when we were gathering the funds, what that looked like was essentially gathering community around this NFT bid. So we're going to pool money together and we'll try and bid for this NFT and maybe we'll win. That was the vision. And we did go through with this, but what we found was very interesting, that since we had gathered such a huge treasury, 55 million, we found ourselves in a situation during the auction where everyone knew our max bid. And so as a result, the kind of game theory of the auction broke down and became somewhat incoherent, because normally auctions, they require information asymmetry. You don't know what other people's are going to bid. And that's how you get this like organic bidding activity. But because everyone knew, oh, they've got 55 million in the bank, when are they going to put down? There was a kind of a inorganic auction, a market that took place, where it was a kind of performance of an auction rather than a true auction. Because to do a genuine auction, you need information asymmetry, which is to say you need your treasuries to be private. And again, for the Assange community, we could have also benefited from our donors being private, from our multi-sig participants being private, because obviously there was a lot of persecution and targeting of those people over the last 2 years.
Yes, and in relation to the auction, one also needs to know the reason why it also was very inorganic was at the time the gas fees on Ethereum, the transaction fees were quite high, and for every bid you made you actually had to pay transaction fees. So because people knew, well, they're going to bid up to that level, I don't have that much money, so why should I even do it or even play the game, because I'm going to lose money just bidding for it. So there weren't many other bidders, and the second largest bidder only bid 4,000 ETH, and we actually then placed the 17,000 ETH bid. So that created a big issue in the community, which we are still trying to solve. But just to maybe close this discussion, it's the DAO that achieved a very tangible and very important goal, freeing Julian, and it would be nice if there were more people reporting about it.
Yes, yeah.